Hi, Murray from MVM, and this time we've gone out to our workshop. You might notice from our other videos the background looks fairly similar. That's because it's wet, cold and miserable out there today, so we thought we'd do this one indoors. I know, we're not real strong. We're going to have a look at a flute and what you can do as routine maintenance and how you can look after your flute a little bit. We get lots of instruments in our workshop that just need a little bit of TLC, and you can do that at home, save yourself quite a lot of money. The first thing I do when I get an instrument in is have a look at the case. Why? Because if the case is scratched, bent, dented, damaged, it's an indication either the instrument's very old or it's an indication that the instrument's not being cared for. When we open up inside, yes, there's a flute inside. That's great. I hope you can see that. I will always look to see what is lying around in the flute. Often people put their cleaning cloths and things like that in. This applies to any woodwind instrument really, but they'll put stuff on top here. Cases are not meant to have things on top of them. So you run the risk of bending keys and struggling and causing damage. So just be careful what you put in your case. If you can't fit it all in, like there's a nice little spot there for the flute cleaning rod, that's great. But a lot of people put that in the middle, or a lot of people put it in their main section of the flute, the main body. If that's the case, just make sure it's not causing pressure on the instrument. They do bend, and particularly when you're working with the cheaper variety of flutes, you find often the metal is so thin it will bend and you don't even notice it. Okay, so we have a look. The first thing I do is test the joints of the flute, what they call the tenons. I'm just going to put that down there because it's going to go down there in a minute anyway. And just make sure that should be nice and easy, not gritty, not difficult. You will find at times you get dust and stuff in there and on there. Give it a bit of a polish, just a quick polish, bit of silvo, bit of flute polish, just give it a polish. And in polishing there too, you can actually see, I don't know if you can see that on my finger, that's come out of that flute. So that was a clean finger, I used it yesterday, but now there it is, and it's just that black, that's the grit and muck that we want to get rid of. Often you'll find you'll get dirt in that, and that's what causes your flute joints to stick. Same with the tenon. Now the foot joint tenon should be nice and firm. That one's nice and firm. Often you'll find though it flops around, and what causes that is when kids, particular kids, take them apart, they grip them, they go reef, and they pull it towards them because that's not sitting nice and smoothly, and it bends. It takes that there, it bends their end in, so it becomes floppy, and you'll often see them there, and the flute will be flipping around like so, or when they put it on, it'll be at an angle. So we check that straight away. Now you do a visual of your flute. A couple of things that really go wrong big time. First of all, I suggest people, if you're just doing a bit of home maintenance, don't take the tuning cork out. Okay, it's not worth it. If it's sitting there properly, make sure that that's on, make sure the crown is nice and firm. You can check the tuning. A lot of people don't actually know. I don't know if you can catch that, Jared, black on black, but at the top of the flute rod is a tuning device that goes in your flute, and the second hole, the middle stripe, now I don't know, are you getting that on? Yeah, goes in the middle of the hole. That way you can check the intonation and tuning of the flute. Any questions, contact us through our website and we're happy to run you through it. We will then also have a little look. Now I'm just going to use a bit of a pointer because it's a little bit fine. If we can close up on that one, that'd be really good. But one of the biggest problems we have, commonly see, is this key here. I call it the hockey stick key, but you see it stands out. It is often bent, and when it gets bent, it bends up against these pads here, and suddenly nothing below that works. So you often get them in and they go, well, I can play G, but I can't play F. Can't play further down, and that's because of that is bent. And the first thing you look at is there's that one. We then have a look. Now I can see straight away here a screw protruding. Now is that showing? Because that screw there, right, that means that screw's loose. On a lot of instruments, the threads are so delicate, the screws just wear out, come out, and of course when that comes out, the rod gets out of line, the pad doesn't close, you've got a problem. So one of the things that I do, little screwdriver, great one to keep in your case, and just put it on there, and with a bit of luck, you can just tighten that up. Now how much do you tighten it? Don't over tighten it. They are delicate, but I would tighten it to the point where it stops, and then I would check to see that that's still moving. If you over tighten it, that pad will just not move. I'll have a look at the pads, and I always just look down from the top, and I go along each one and have it with no pressure, just enough to close it, and see if it's seating. Have a look to see if the pad is damaged. Is it closing? Yes, no, whatever. And then once I've done that, I'll actually run combinations of fingers and feel it. Another way that you can do that is put a light down the end in a darkened room, and when you close it, you'll see a ring of light where the pad's not sitting. We actually go one further. We go with a camera down the end, and we give it a bit of an arthroscope and a bit of an endoscope, and have a look at that and go, oh, that's right, that's there. Yeah, I can see that that pad's not sitting, or that pad's bulging, or whatever, and that's it. But that's what we do. That's our job. When you're at home, if you've got that gear, good on you. If you haven't, darkened room with the light down the end, or just a visual inspection will help you no end. I also, in that visual inspection, will have a look at each one of those pads and look at things. You can see here, there's a clearance cork. Now that's not critical, but that clearance cork means that you can see that the distance of that is sitting way up. So we're going to loosen that screw off and adjust that down before we retighten it. It should sit about there. Doesn't have to be that high, and then I'm going to put that cork back in. Otherwise, you get that clicky sound when you're playing, which is not what you want. Finally, I'm going to look at the springs. Now the springs, you'll see them all the way along here. There's a ton of them. I don't think you can see many effectively on the video, but if you look at your flute or your woodwind instrument, you'll see them. There's probably one of the best examples there. And just check to see that the springs are on. You'll notice if you see a spring just sitting up there with the end not attached to anything, you'll know, oh, okay, I can press it down. Now I can use a little screwdriver and put it down. The best tool in the book is a crochet hook. Number 2 crochet hook, nice and fine. You can actually just hook it, pull it round, done. Very quickly. Once I've done that, I'm going to clean the instrument. Don't get the pads wet, okay, because the pads will absorb moisture and swell, and then you're just asking for trouble, or they get damaged, and if it's in the case for a while, they'll rot. So don't get the pads wet, but just clean the body of the flute over with your favourite silver polishing, non-abrasive. Don't ever use Brasso. Don't ever use a cutting compound. Keep it nice and gentle. Just polish it nice and easily. And if you want to keep it polished, every time you finish playing, just rub the flute over. Easy. And then we use key oil. Key oil is what we can use to oil these little joints. Now, in the workshop, in a service, we actually disassemble the flute, pull out the rods, polish the rods, put them all back together. If you're just doing it as a matter of maintenance, you can actually just put a little tiny blob of oil on the joint there, and that will work its way in. Only need a touch on every joint that you can find, just a smidgen, and it'll work its way in, and before you know it, that flute is working perfectly. Of course, what we need to do is then test the instrument, and I don't know, this is one of our spares. I don't even know if it's played. I haven't really done much on it, but test the instrument and see if it works. Fantastic. That instrument's now ready to go back to its owner, and etc. So clean it, inspect it, look for it, Start at one end, work your way down. And there's nothing to say you can't test every one of these screws. Right? You can go and test them and see that they're not over tight, just nipped up. And if we do that on all our instruments, whether it be a saxophone, clarinet, oboe, bassoon, any of our woodwind instruments, they all use that same technique. Clean it, inspect it, give it some TLC. You'll never need to really get it serviced, perhaps once every 10 years, save you the money, but also give you the satisfaction of the instrument being absolutely playable the moment you pick it up. See you next time something goes wrong.